Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Today is, I believe it's November 2nd, 2023. I hope you're doing well today. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you very much. I just finished eating dinner, so I figured I would. So if there's any, if you see myself chewing on stuff and if I have blue lips, you know why. I, I eat blueberries quite often, and I had some blueberries. Great stuff. So yeah, let's continue with the video blog about art. And let's move to our very next quote. Let us begin. So the quote is a single sentence by Mr. Gustave Courbet, born 1819, died 1877. So, we're talking about late 19th century. Okay, Gustave, tell us what you have to say. He says, it is fatal for art if it is forced into official respectability and condemned to sterile mediocrity. Okay. That's pretty dramatic, Gustav. Well, I appreciate what you have to say there. And I think I agree. It is fatal. That's a pretty imperative word. It is fatal for art if it is forced into official respectability and condemned to sterile mediocrity. So, so what is it for art to reach official respectability? This reminds me of the quote that I had yesterday relating to Mark. Mark was talking about art that was high art, right? True art. And he was talking about what were the elements of true art. Now we're talking about art that is officially respectable. Respectable art. And Gustav is making a pretty serious point. He says it is fatal for art if art is constrained by organizations that structure, I suppose, organize, and give respectability to art. Because what it does is it produces art of sterile mediocrity or sterile mediocrity. That's an even more mediocre way of saying sterile. Sterile is less mediocre. But what forces art into this sterile mediocrity? Well, it is being accepted by the mainstream, being accepted by maybe not even the mainstream, but official respectability, maybe organizations that are formed to support art, to display art, to present art, and are lauded for that. It achieves notability, and maybe it's called high art, maybe it's called true art in society, and it becomes respectable. Oh my goodness. But therefore slowly becomes mediocre. Yeah, mediocre. Lacking in surprise, lacking in interest. Why? Because it's respectable or made to be respectable by a group of high-minded individuals. Who knows if it's mainstream or not? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's very exclusive. But yeah, but afterwards the art produced is mediocre. Yeah, because it's got to meet the standards, right? The standards of respectability, and it becomes dull, becomes predictable. Hey, I get it. Art, art that meets clear standards and is not surprising, not different, not strange, not weird, not thought provoking. Art that is sort of made in a formulaic way by a recipe just to meet expectations of a select few? No. Is it respectable? Yes. And mediocre. Where's the surprise? Yeah, I hear what Gustav is saying. Yeah, he says, watch out because this is deadly to art. Oh, I wonder, it's kind of funny. It becomes mediocre. Now, he says it's deadly to art. Does it mean that art ceases to be? Well, certainly I'd argue that even if it is mediocre and it meets standards, it's still art. Certainly. It's just not interesting art. It's just dull, carbon copy art that is prescribed, that people have, already preformed impressions about. Yeah. And here's the thing. There are lots of institutions that support art in the world. And there are some institutions that have been around for a long, long time. And there are also some forms of art that are very specific. Those organizations prescribe art in certain ways, and because for one reason or another, maybe these organizations find that useful. They want to attract a certain audience. They will need art of this caliber, of this type, of this category, of this skill level. Expressing these themes, and quickly it becomes sterile and mediocre, and it's certainly still may be art. However, it is deadly to the arts, certainly, to have these. So what is art that's alive, Gustav? I wonder if you could help us answer that. What is art that's alive and thriving? A breathing, living thing that's unique in almost every way. What kind of art is that? Art that's not mediocre. Art that's superlative. Well, I have a few guesses, Gustav might say. First of all, it would be unrespectable. It would be not respectable at all. Well, I don't know. That might be an aspect of it. But it would certainly be less respectable than the respected art, which is mediocre. So maybe we need to make room as artists for art that's unrespectable, that's derespectable, that's anti-respectable. Because somehow that freshens and enlivens the art. It makes it controversial. Absolutely. People start talking about it. It gains people's attention. We turn our heads and we wag our finger. It's disrespectful, unrespectable. It lacks respect. But you know what? It's unique. It's unusual. It's odd. It's unpredictable. It lacks convention. It violates the rules. But it's alive, right? It's not dead. It's alive. Gustav would call that kind of art alive. That's right. It's surprising. Avant-garde. Well, maybe not even avant-garde. Maybe avant-garde. Definitely on the cutting edge of art. Something that's maybe not quite art as understood currently. Maybe it's so unusual, so unanticipated, so new that people lack words to understand it. Maybe the mainstream doesn't quite understand it. Maybe respectable organizations of art that support it don't understand it. Maybe most anyone in the audience doesn't understand it. It's alive. It's the liveness. It adds liveness to everybody, right? Well, maybe not everybody. Maybe there's some who understand it. Some who where that art gives them extra meaning to live out their lives. Maybe it is inspiring for some. Who knows? Who knows? But it's just unimaginable. And maybe it lacks category. Maybe it's hard to categorize it. Gustav would suggest that this is living art. That's right. Not the fatal art that's been forced into official respectability. This alive art, this vital art, well, it's unofficial. It's not respectable. That's right. And in fact, it's not sterile at all. It's not sterile. It's contaminated. It may as well be. And it's certainly not mediocre. No, it's super. It's superlative art. It's art that goes beyond... Well, anyway, I think you get the point. That's part of what makes art energetic. Art that's not accepted, not acceptable, that really breaks the mold, that leaves categories, and makes us question and wonder how to think about this or that. Now that is art that's alive. Now, I guess, do I agree with these statements that Gustav is saying or suggesting? Indirectly, quite often, since he's been dead for a number of years. And this is only one sentence in all of his writing work. I'm probably losing some of the context here, speaking as a modern. Do I agree? I kind of agree with it. I definitely do. Part of what makes art so alive is just how different it is and how it makes a person think and ponder about the world. I think that's true. Now, sometimes this art is grating. It's unpleasant in many respects. It's odd. It's difficult. It's contrary to what one would expect. Maybe not fully, but partially contrary. Maybe it makes a few people uncomfortable. It might. It might cause people to protest. Maybe. Maybe they pay attention enough to dismiss it. It's true. I'm sure that there are a number of examples of art like that just sort of attracts dissent. People who are dissenting. People who are anti-establishment. Yeah, you could. In fact, that would be probably a good way to find out where all the most alive art is, right? By Gustav's definition, anyway. To find where those folks are, sort of on the edge of the border, right? They're gathering at the edge, observing an audience for some form of art that has not reached common acceptance and is certainly not respectable. Certainly not considered high art at all. So I guess that's how we would find it. We would sort of look around in those disreputable institutions, less than reputable institutions that support non-art or anti-art. Yeah. It is kind of interesting. I mean, and there always have been kinds of art that are like that, and there always will be kinds of art that is like that. I'm guessing that Gustav thinks of art and its purpose probably is something that is that one it ought to be deriving novelty from, ought to be deriving certainly attention from, or to, or deriving some kind of change, right? I'm guessing that Gustav is interested in art that changes people. And what kind of art changes people the most, other than art that is not conventional? I mean, if you've seen like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom 1, Temple of Doom 2, Temple of Doom 3, Temple of Doom 4, and Temple of Doom 5, whatever iteration in the sequel, you kind of get a sense of, what the character's about, what the movie's going to be about, and you're already sort of falling into, I don't know, a sterile mediocrity. I mean, just look at like The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which, by the way, what a stunning novelist. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Man, I really respect that writer, and his stories are amazing. And but there's a lot of Sherlock Holmes stories, and there's a lot of 007 stories. There's a lot of certainly Star Wars stories. There's a lot of stories like that. Even Harry Potter stories. There's a lot of those. There's just basically a natural end to a series. I think that's what Gustav is also sort of implying in his words. Like, there's a point where where the repetition happens and it's just not interesting anymore. It becomes mediocre. If you remember, like the situation comedy Happy Days, eventually the writers just kind of got tired. They couldn't come up with any more interesting stories. And there was Fonz jumping the shark. And that was a meme that was created representing, when Happy Days just sort of jumped the shark. I think Fonz was jumping a shark called Jaws or something. I don't know. In his motorcycle, and he was a daredevil or something like that. And it's like, this is the best that the writers could come up with for those particular characters, because they just run out of ideas. And they were trying to grab eyeballs, I suppose. And Happy Days jumped the shark in the sense that they were really reaching for stories to tell. And, I have a feeling they just got tired. I have a feeling the actors got tired, and the director got tired, and the writers got tired. We just all got tired, and we told all the interesting stories. And, a lot of things are like that. A lot of sitcoms are like that. Seinfeld, there was like this arc of the story. It's like, wow, it started really great, and then there's a decline. And then Friends kind of did that, the Friends sitcom. And there are a lot of things that just go through their normal arc. Like you start them, and eventually they end. And sometimes they end prematurely. They just end because who knows. But there's this structure that is formed, or this form that the story takes, and the form could only be sustained for so long before interest wanes. It's just not interesting anymore. And you sort of run to the edge of anyone's ability to pay attention. And things get mediocre really fast, and audiences just start falling away. eyeballs start falling away and interest lulls, and that's the end. It's just the end, you know. And, I can imagine art just being that way. There's just a point where it becomes too constrained by the people who are interested in it. And it just stops growing. I mean, that happened a lot to a lot of Star Trek franchises. There are points at which that particular series just ended. It's just like, and who knows? It could have been caused by the direction the producer wanted to take, or the direction the studio wanted to take, shift in economics. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why people take their attention away from certain stories or certain types of art. Things just fall out of favor. They fall out of fashion. And in a way, that's good, because you kind of just want, it's almost like a seasonal thing. There's spring, summer, fall, winter of any piece of art, and or any style or expression, artistic expression. There just becomes a point where it just sort of putters out. And that's really just true of almost everything. Except for, except for atoms or electrons. And then I seem to recall that there is a point where even those atoms or electrons end up dissolving. I don't know what theoretical point that is, but I think it's discussed, at least theoretically. I might have to do some research on that subject. Just look at stars, for example. There's a point where stars burn up. They either go supernova, or they go white dwarf, or, I maybe not white dwarf, but maybe they do, I don't know, they go red giant, and then they just fizzle out. Or they go supernova and they explode all over the universe. There's an end to almost everything. Almost everything. And when I say, and the things that there's no end to, well, I don't know, photons. There's probably an end to those. There's probably some fields. They end at the end of the universe. Pretty much everything comes to an end somewhere, sometime. And the same is true with art. It eventually ends up getting to a point where it lacks the ability to inspire others. And so after that, it's dead. Gustav would say, it's fatal. We have a fatality that the purpose of art has ended. It's no longer inspiring people. It's no longer interesting. People are leaving it behind. There's little energy for those observers or audience members in them to change on account of just being exposed to this artistic work. I don't know. I guess Gustav is, he's kind of talking about how he's talking about a lot of things. I think he might even be talking about, now here's the thing, why does this happen at all? It's kind of like a social phenomenon. Sure. There's human beings, we like being part of the crowd, particularly the in crowd. And we will sustain that in crowd for a long, long time, even beyond its utility, its usefulness. If we think we're on to something, there will be more and more people banding around and collecting examples of it and being interested in it until, our expectations are met maybe too well and continuously for maybe more than enough time. more than the necessary time and more than the expected time. And then interest wanes. There's also another part of human personality where, there's some who see the mainstream and they don't want anything to do with it. They're like the anti-dentites. I'm referring to a Seinfeld episode where someone is, someone is accusing someone else of being against dentists. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For anything that someone is really interested in, there are others who are interested in the opposite of it. Now, why is that true? I don't know. It's really just a funny aspect of human nature. And it's kind of funny. Human nature sort of runs at both poles. We flock around things that are generally interesting or important or valuable. And there are also some who flock around the opposite because they don't want to have anything to do with it. Or there might be a lot of other reasons why people are like anti-establishment. People are they're just filled with discontent about the way things are going, about the trends that people are seeing, and here's the thing: there's probably a lot of value in that. If you think about it, if I were a businessman, say I was interested in investing in the stock market, well, one of the rules of thumb I would have is to go where people aren't. To pick up the cheap stocks, right? Buy low, sell high. That's the whole point. And in order to do that, you kind of have to be looking in places that other people aren't looking. Picking up the stocks that people are dropping. And that's how you can, theoretically, make a lot of money, I suppose. That's the whole buy low, sell high. Absolutely. Notice how it's very anti-establishment. They are selling high. I mean, what does it mean to sell a stock or sell anything of value when it's at its highest point? Most people I know would hold on. The mainstream would hold on. But these anti-establishment folks, when they see all these people are holding on, they'll drop it like a hot potato. And, and many of them go on to make millions in the stock market because they're buying low and selling high. And in fact, if you think about it, it's really a very contradictory way to live your life or be an investor. You're buying low. That means when everybody else has abandoned something in the markets, everybody else is abandoning it. You walk in and you buy it then. You buy it then. You do what other people are not doing. And you sell high. When people are most readily grasping for something, you're selling. It's definitely a contrarian point of view. And I guess in order to make lots of money, maybe you'd have to be a little bit of a contrarian. Anyway, that's if you wanted to make money through buying low and selling high. You sort of have to be a contrarian. So, a contrarian would be able to, or a very, very successful investor would probably be able to be a great person to ask, where are the most alive arts around town? Because as a person who buys low, that person would probably know where to go to check out the shows that nobody wants to see. These are the art pieces that people want nothing to do with. I'll buy it, is what the contrarian says. I'll buy them. And for the contrarian, if they have a piece of art that everybody else wants, of course, you know what they're going to do. That's right. They want to sell high. They want to get rid of it. If they notice that they have a piece of art that people around them are loving and they're clamoring around him to buy, to look at, the wealthy investor sells it immediately. I don't know. That's what is implied by buy low, sell high. It's just really contrarian nature of that kind of personality. Now, if I ask myself, am I a contrarian? Oh, I am not. I'm not a contrarian. Just from a personality perspective. Maybe I am a contrarian in some respects. I think I might be a contrarian sometimes as it relates to psychology. I love psychology and personally, and I love thinking about the subject area. And if I'm dead set on a certain concept, maybe a concept in, I don't know, some theoretical concept, I might retain my position, even if maybe even in the face of hearing a lot of people who don't particularly agree with my position. Because partly, I think I've just, over the years, have gained lots of confidence in my judgment as it relates to this field. Not that I'm a professional in it. I'm definitely an amateur, and I hold no credential in psychology. I don't claim to have any special knowledge. It's just something I enjoy thinking about a lot. I absolutely spend a lot of time thinking about psychology of various forms. Many of the different schools of psychology and the authors and thinkers. I'm very interested in paying attention to all of that. And, I can imagine, and I guess what happens is I've established in my own mind, a certain set of understandings, right? And so, I think I'm willing to go out on a limb on a certain number of ideas, just theoretical, philosophical, psychological concepts, just because I'm so familiar with them and believe that I understand them well. And so I have the ability to just say I can go out on a limb where others might not necessarily go out on a limb about some theoretical concepts relating to psychology. But I only do that because I just have a deep sense of inner understanding, at least so I say. But in any other way, I'm usually I'm not that contrarian. I'm all about working with the group to hammer out solutions that are for the common good. So I wouldn't necessarily call myself a contrarian or a misanthrope or anything like that. I'm definitely one of the more conventional folks out there, and I don't necessarily. I'm not contrarian necessarily. So I guess, do I have what it takes? Do I have the mental wherewithal to be contrarian and to produce art that's alive, according to Gustav? I probably don't have the chutzpah or the guts, the courage, the huevos to really produce avant-garde art that changes lives, that's alive. I'll probably always gravitate towards art that's a little bit more mediocre as a result of my personality profile and some of my traits, which is kind of interesting. That means there may be born artists out there. Artists that, they're really comfortable walking the edge. Aren't we all glad that those artists are out there? That they're doing the hard artistry? because they're keeping the disciplines of art alive. Well, anyway, with that, I just want to say thank you for bearing with me as long as you have, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.